Welcome to Cindy's Adventures in Stitching, and today's video is going to be a very short tutorial on how to make floss drops using a Cricut Maker. I bought my Cricut back in 2018 and really haven't used it that much. Chances are good that you may have a Cricut or you may know someone that owns a Cricut, and if they're nice to you or you're nice to them, you can probably talk them into making floss drops. You can probably talk them into making floss drops for you. It's a great economical way to make floss drops. And so before we get started with the actual tutorial of Cricut Design Space,
She was standing up on her hind legs.
She was. She wants to know what's going on. This is unusual activity in the evening for them, and so they're so curious. They're very much personality of a cat. So if something different's going on, they want to check it out and see what's happening. Okay, so anyway, before we get into Cricut Design Space, let's go over just something that's really kind of important about making floss drops, and that is cardstock. Now, cardstock is given a standard of measure called GSM, which stands for grams per square meter. The higher that number, the thicker the cardstock. And honestly, my experience, and I'm not an expert, but I have made several of them, my experience has been you don't want to use anything less than 180 GSM, because if you do, it's going to be too flimsy and it just doesn't hold up well. So I wanted to go over just some examples for you very quickly on what works and what doesn't work. I had some Cricut cardstock here. I've got two examples, and I've actually used quite a bit for other things, but for floss drops, it's not thick enough. And I also find it really interesting that it is not labeled GSM anywhere on the Cricut labels or on their description of how thick it is. I find that really interesting. Now, they do sell some thicker GSM or higher number GSM on Amazon, but because I have the patience of a 5-year-old, I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to order it and wait for it to come in. So instead, I went to Hobby Lobby and Michael's, and this is what I bought at Michael's, and it was 180 GSM or GM squared. And I loved it as far as they had quite a bit to choose from as far as patterns and things like that. I thought that was really pretty. But honestly, 180, it's too flimsy. It doesn't work very well. So these two I got from Hobby Lobby. And there it's got the price, and then I think I had a coupon. And this one also doesn't say the GSM on it. And I just kind of, there was a package that was open, so I kind of, did the flimsy test and decided I'd give it a try. Now, I have heard of people, they have made their floss drops out of GSM of 180 or less, and they've glued them back to back, but it didn't work very well for me. It came unglued, and that's just an extra step that takes time, and I didn't really like it. So now I know that 180 GSM is not thick enough, but Hobby Lobby did have something, a heavyweight, that was 216 GSM, and that works pretty well. And I've made many, many floss drops out of this. Amazon does have a 250. I know that they have a 250 that has glitter on the cardstock, but I'm not sure that you'd want to use glitter because I think that glitter would get everywhere.
That's been my experience.
I don't even want to know. I don't want to know about that. But, and it also dulls your blade. So a rule of thumb would be don't buy any cardstock that's going to be less than 250. Or is that what that says? No, I'm sorry, 216. Don't buy any cardstock that's less than 216. I don't know why. I think they had 250 on Amazon, and that's where that number came from. 180, it's just not thick enough, so don't do that either. Let's go over to my computer screen and let's talk about how to make these floss drops.
Now, do you need a technological wizard to do this?
You do not, and that's the beauty of it all. I am not a Cricut expert. I know just enough to do a little bit. I got my Cricut when I retired. I got it right away. And I thought, I'm going to make signs. I'm going to do the vinyl. I'm going to do the stuff on cups. And then I wouldn't call it my local sewing store, but my store where they have a lot of machines, and my family's bought sewing machines from them. They called me about a month after I bought this Cricut and said they had a used sewing machine for a good price. And so I bought it. And once I bought that sewing machine, I was really kind of hooked on that, on sewing versus on the Cricut.
What type of machine was that?
That was a Destiny sewing machine, and
So embroidery machine.
it was an embroidery machine. And not too much later, now I know. I mean, it was a situation where, gosh, if I knew then what I know now, deal. But anyway,
It always gets you.
it does. So I bought that Destiny used, and it was okay. It did introduce me to the world of sewing machine embroidery, but like, I don't know, a few months later, they came out with the Solaris, which was, you know, the granddaddy of them all, or the grandmama of them all. And so anyway, my point was, I didn't really get to know my Cricut very much because I was spending all my time and energy and brain space on the embroidery machine. So because of that, I haven't really used my Cricut much. However, about 6 months ago, I thought, when I changed my whole floss storage solution and how I wanted to store my floss with projects and things like that, I thought, hey, you know what? I could make floss drops myself with my Cricut. And that's what I did. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go step by step through Cricut Design Space on how to make these floss drops. Several different shapes to choose from, and it's really pretty quick and not hard to do at all. So follow along with us as we go through this. We're going to change the view from me to the monitor, and hopefully it'll all make sense. So when I open up the Cricut Design Space, I've got all of these tabs over on the left side. We're going to go over to Shapes. Click on that, and everything that you see here, all of these are free. You don't have to pay any extra monthly for any of these shapes. Now, if we went down further, those are all Cricut Access, and we'll get into that later. But for right now, we're going to choose the pennant shape. So I click on Pennant. It brings it up onto the screen. I move it to the center just to give me a little bit more room. I'm going to go up to where it says Operation. I'm going to click on that black color, and I'm going to change it to a different color just to make it pretty. Once I have my color chosen, I'm going to click outside that box.
Now, the color choosing that has nothing to do with the printout.
It has nothing to do with how it's printed.
Gotcha. So it's just for your personal preference.
Right. It's just for my personal preference. That's it. So once I have my color changed, again, I'm going to click on the center of my pennant shape. Now I can change the size of this. I have found through trial and error that a good size for this pennant shape is about 2 by 3 inches. And I can change that by putting my cursor right over that little block or that square. And I got 1.99 by 3, and that's pretty darn close. Another way to change it is to go to the More tab, click on that arrow, and then you can see it's got a width size and a height size. In order to change those independently, I have to unlock that tab. And from here, I can change it to the exact number I want it to be. So let's just make it 2.0. Hit enter. It didn't really change it much as far as how it looks on the screen, but I know that right now I've got a 2.0 width, and I'm going to make that a 3.0 height. So there we go. So that's my pennant shape. I go back over to the shapes, and I'm going to choose the circle, because that's how I'm going to attach it to my floss ring. Through trial and error, I have found that I want this little bitty circle to be 0.50. Again, I can do it by just shrinking it down slowly. Or I again can go to the More tab, and I can unlock it, and I can make this exactly what I want it to be. So I want it to be 0.5 by 0.5. So I click on it, erase those numbers, make it the number I want it to be, hit enter, and I have 0.5 inches by 0.5. Now we can move it over.
There you go.
All right, now when you move that over, you want to make sure you leave enough space up here so that it's pretty rigid. And once you've done that, you know that it's not going to tear easily. Then you're going to highlight the whole thing. Get rid of this, want $10 off shipping. Now we're going to slice it. And you have to highlight the entire shape in order to use the slice command. So we've highlighted the entire shape. We've sliced it, and we can go ahead and highlight what we've sliced over on the right side. So click on that, and we're going to delete that. And we've got our hole, and that's what we're going to hang the floss drop from the ring from. Hope that makes sense. Now we need to slice a hole in where we're going to put the embroidery thread. So again, we hit shapes. We could use a circle if we wanted, or we could use an oval. I kind of prefer the oval. So let's hit the oval. And again, we're going to make it to the correct size. Trial and error and messing with this a bunch has helped me to realize that I kind of want it 1 by 0.7. That's just a good size. So let's see if we can make that. That's pretty close. So we got 0.99 by 0.7. We're going to drag that over. I eyeball it to center it.
You could also use your grid lines because they're on a 2-inch spacing. So if you moved your whole thing over to your edge on one of those grid lines, then you could actually line up exactly where you want it.
We could, or we could eyeball it. Which, I mean, this is a perfect example of how I eyeball and Sam would measure. That's why I do what I do and he does what he does. So we're again going to highlight the entire form. That brings up the slice command. We're going to slice that out. Over here on the right, you can see where we have sliced it. So we're going to highlight that black slice, delete it, highlight the purple slice, delete that, and we have our first floss drop. Now, we want to move that over to the corner. And we want to duplicate that because we're going to eventually fill this entire page. And because the size paper that we're using is 9.5 by 11, then we kind of have an idea of how many of these we can fit in the top row and how many we can fit in the bottom row. So we're going to duplicate it. We have it highlighted.
Does it matter how close to the edge you get?
No, it doesn't matter as long as you're within that boundary.
Gotcha.
So we're going to duplicate. So we clicked on this little duplication button. We're going to move this guy up and we're going to get it pretty close. Now we can fit 4 of these. in the first row or the top row. So we're going to highlight both of those. We're going to duplicate it. And we're going to move them to the top.
Aren't you fancy?
Yeah. So we're going to do this second row exactly like the first row. And in order to save time, we can highlight all 4 of those. Duplicate the row. And move it over.
Shazam.
I know. It's really, I mean, it's really pretty simple, obviously, if I can do it. Now, in order to cut this, one thing that we have to do is the next step is to attach. So we hit the attach button. And if we did not do that, when we move over to actually cutting it out, they'd be all mumbo jumbo on the screen. But this keeps them in that same format, which makes it much easier. It's one less step you have to do when you get ready to do the make it. So if you can show...
Now can you save that so that you can come back to it later? And
yeah, there's a save. There's a save command. I've never done it at the beginning like this. I've always done it at the end. But yes, you can save it, and definitely you want to, if you want to continue making this shape.
You know how I am about saving files.
I know. I've gotten in trouble more than once, but I know that I can save it at the end. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is turn on our Cricut Maker. The next step is to go ahead and turn on our Cricut Maker. So there's a power button right here on the right side. Are you impressed with me using my right and left commands?
I am.
I've been thinking about it. So it makes a
I
little
thought you
bit...
had an R and an L on it.
No, it makes a little bit of noise.
And I'm not making fun of Cindy. She suffers from Gertzmann syndrome, so right and left, when she gets it right or correct, is a big deal.
And now we're going to click on Make It. And there it shows all of your floss drops in a row. And this is going to be a basic cut. It shows it over here. It shows the word basic cut. And now we hit continue. Now we have to choose what kind of material are we cutting. Are we doing cardstock? We doing a light cardstock, a foil poster, copy paper, vinyl, and etc. And the great thing about the Cricut Maker, which is why I wanted this, is because it does cut fabric. And this actually is going to be the first in a series of ways to use your Cricut for cross stitch. So we'll get to that other part later at a different time. So we're going to be cutting, this is cardstock, and it is 216 GSM. So we click on that. And if you look over here at my Cricut, it shows a blinking light. That means it's ready to load. Now, I will tell you, even though I haven't used my Cricut a ton, my light grip mat looks like it's been through the ringer. It really hasn't, but it just kind of collects dirt because it's kind of sticky. So I have attached, or I am attaching, my cardstock to my light grip mat.
So it just sticks to it?
Mm-hmm. It just sticks to it. After a while, they lose their stickiness, and then you can replace it or you can clean it. And sometimes it loses its stickiness because there's so much debris. So you pop it in.
Do you have to index that anyway?
What?
Do you have to index that anyway, the
Yes.
paper to the mat?
I just did it according to the line.
So he's put it up in the corner.
Just put it up in the corner.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to load it. You can kind of see it has these little, I don't know what you call those, little thingies that align it. Once I have my paper on and I've aligned it, I'm going to hit that blinking arrow. It's going to read it. And I prefer to think of this not standing for the word Cricut or cut, but standing for the word Cindy. That tells me Cindy's ready to go. I press that. It reads the paper.
So it's cutting out the circles first.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the smaller your shape that you're cutting, the more of those that you can fit on that cardstock. I'm kind of holding that, but you wouldn't have to. In fact, I've walked away from it before while it was cutting and I haven't had any trouble. I mean, I didn't leave the room, but...
This is riveting. This is actually the first time I've seen it in production.
Oh, there you go. It really is really cool. And there are so many things you can do with a Cricut. It just depends on how you want to spend your time and what you want to learn. When I started thinking about all of the applications for cross stitch that you can use a Cricut, I was kind of surprised. And I think it will be interesting to show how many different ways you can use the Cricut for cross stitch.
They use that for your camper as well. You cut out a template for me to make your
that's right.
Your spare tire cover.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. That was a bit of a challenge, but
for both of us. How many spare tire covers did I go through?
Oh, yeah.
We got visitors coming back.
Okay, so it's telling me that it's done cutting. And I hit the blinking light again, and it's going to spit it out. And then, over here on my screen, I don't know if you can see this, but...
Stand by. Okay.
You just press done, or click on done, and it brings you back to your original screen. So now, we're going to take this over here, and we're going to use a Cricut tool.
Cricuts have tools?
Cricut has tools. And we're going to peel the paper off of the mat. They say, I've heard, read, watched YouTube, whatever, that touching it with your fingers isn't good. So you can use this little tool, and I know it has a name, but I don't remember what it's called. And you can peel those off.
There's a term for what you're doing, and I'm racking my brain trying to remember it. I had a friend that passed away that had a vinyl shop, and oh darn it, what was that called?
Maybe somebody who's watching can tell us.
Or it'll come to me tomorrow. I got to... Oh, I remember him telling me what he was going to do. Isn't that just the worst thing?
I mean, it gets worse with age. I hate to tell you, but it does.
So many things do.
Yep. Getting older is not for the weary, that's for sure. So we're just about done picking that off. And you can see my mat, it's kind of gross. And I thought, oh, maybe I should buy a new one. But then I thought, oh, no. I mean, this is real life.
Psst. You can't see it in the camera.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, so here are our pennant-shaped floss drops.
Ain't that slick?
Yeah.
And they're all identical.
And they're all exactly the same. So we've cut out our first set of pennant shapes, and it gives me the option of saving my work. So I'm going to save it and move down to Create New Collection, and I need to name it. So my new collection is going to be Pennant Floss Drop, or Floss Drops. And create, and we should be good. It should have saved it. So I want to show you how to make a different shape, and how do you do that is to go to New, and that I've already saved it, so we can just go ahead and replace it. Again, we're going to start with Shapes, and instead of using the free ones, we're going to go down to Cricut Access, and that gives us different ones to use. You can see we have a gift tag shape, a rounded gift tag shape. We could go up here and use this scalloped circle. I don't think a heart shape would be great because we'd have to cut out our circle and then right away we'd have to go into our oval. You could definitely do this rectangle. You could do a decorative label, but I wanted to show you something completely different. And again, there's more shapes, but we're going to go to Search for More. And that takes us, if you'll notice, this takes us to images down here. We could scroll through a bunch of different images, but instead...
Like 12,539 of them.
that might take a little bit of time. Let's type in the word flower. Oh, might help if I spell it correctly. Hit enter. And let's scroll down and see if we can find a flower shape that would work. Oh, that one looks good, that yellow one. I like that one. Okay, so we click on that and you see where it says add to canvas. We're going to add that to the canvas. Whoa,
Oh, that's big.
that is major big. We're going to take that puppy down. Let's put it more towards the center. Now, just because I know ahead of time what size works well, I'm going to use like 2.25-ish.
You're really close there.
Yeah, there's 2.24, 2.27. Let's go with 2.26. That works. Okay. So again, I'm going to move this just so it's a little bit easier to see on my screen. And again, we have to cut out the shapes or the circle for it to fit onto the floss ring. So we're going to go to a circle. I know from experience that for me, what I liked is 0.5.
Oh, you nailed it.
Look at that. So I'm going to put that up here. That's what my floss drop is going to hang from, is that little circle. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to highlight the entire thing, and that allows me to slice out my circle at the top. I delete that. Looks good. Go back over to shapes because now we need to do the oval. And the oval could be not an oval, but this size oval, or it could be a circle. I just kind of prefer that one. And that oval needs to be, what I like is about 1 by 0.7. Oh, look at that. How cool is that? I put that about the spot where I want it, looks centered, and where I want it to be. Maybe just over a little bit. Okay. And we need to slice that oval out. So we're going to highlight the whole thing. Come down here to our slice option. It shows up on the right side. We highlight the black. Delete that. We highlight the yellow. Delete that. I don't know, that might look a little bit crooked to me, but we'll go with it. So we have our first flower shape. We want to duplicate that. How do you do it? Go over to the right side where it has the duplicate button. Click on it, and we've got flower number 2. Bring it up here to the top. Now, in order for everything to fit, I'm going to scoot these guys over just a little bit more. And we want to duplicate those again. So oops. Want to make sure I get all of it in. So highlight both of those. Hit the duplicate. We got 2 more. Put them up here to the top. Now that may extend too far, but if I've got a 9.5 by 11 paper, I think we'll be good because this shows me that I'm at 9. So we'll see. We'll check it and see.
Will it tell you if you're beyond the...
Yeah, it'll tell me if I'm beyond. Let's duplicate the 4 of these so we can make another row. So we go back over on the right side where our duplicate button is. And there they are. Scooch them over. And I think we're good. I'm going to click off of that. Now, we need to still attach this. That's a really important step. So we're going to have to highlight everybody. Highlight everybody. And when I did that, these commands down at the bottom show up, and we are going to attach. And that looks like everybody's attached. And then we go up to make it. Yep, everybody's attached. We are good to go. So I'm going to hit continue. It's thinking. We're using cardstock medium 216 GSM, and that's exactly the level or the weight that we're using. I put my paper on my light grip cutting mat. You see my flashing light here. These are my guidelines, or my, I guess you call them guides, not guidelines, but just guides. I do make sure that this is attached pretty well because I think if it weren't and it slipped, that the blade could have an issue and maybe try and go underneath it. So I hit my arrow, my flashing arrow. I hit my C for Cindy.
Doesn't it be C for cut?
No, definitely not. It's reading.
Now, how often do you have to change the blade in this?
You know, I did change the blade in this today just because of insurance. I didn't want it to have a problem while we were filming. I don't think I would have had to, and the blades are kind of pricey. I know at Joann's they keep them under lock and key. I think a new blade, I mean, don't hold me to this, I probably shouldn't say, but I think about 40 bucks.
Could you use their super duper coupons on those?
No, a lot of times they're excluded.
Oh, it's like Harbor Freight. It excludes
I mean,
all the
they
good
do that
stuff.
to men too?
Oh yeah, every day.
Yeah, they don't. Although I do get the Cricut emails, and they send me like 30% off of different things. So I usually just delete those emails because I don't buy that many Cricut supplies. I may be doing more since we're going to do that series on how to use a Cricut for cross stitch. So
just for those that don't have a Cricut, how much will a Cricut set you back?
oh, they're pretty pricey, like 400 bucks.
Do they have a Cricut Lite?
No, I don't think so. But you know, these, to make these floss drops, it's really very inexpensive. Much cheaper than if you went to buy floss drops off of Etsy. So if you know someone that has a Cricut and you ask them to make these, if you bought the cardstock and you ask them to make the floss drops, you know, you could buy them, give them a Starbucks gift card or something for $10, and I bet they'd be thrilled. Oh, I see, I got a tear.
Oh,
Yeah, that hardly ever happens.
that new blade.
Yeah, it made a tear. I think I can still maybe use it. All right, my arrow is flashing again. So I hit it and it spits it out. And it's flashing because it doesn't know what to do. So from here, I'm just going to hit done. And then it shows my original picture again. So I guess the moral of this is if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. For me, if I were using those, which I will be, I would use that anyway. Now I'm looking at this and I think I probably could have fit more of those on here. I should have done a better job of checking my space. But I take my tool that we can't remember the name of. Not picking tool, but whatever it's called.
Oh, it's driving me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I should know that, but when I get ready to store my mats, I always put this little plastic sheet over the top of it. And I think it helps keep it from drying out. But here are my floss drops. Again, this is personal preference as far as size is concerned. You could make them bigger if you wanted to. You could make this oval bigger. You could make this a little bit smaller. And if you look over here, I have made different prototypes. When I first started making them, I made them huge. I made them way too big. This is a 3 by 4.5, way too big. This is 275 by 4. Again, I think it's way too big. I even think this one's too big. And you can see where I even where you put the embroidery floss, I made that really big. But it does show, I love this teardrop shape. I think that's really cute. And depending upon how much floss you had to use, you could, if it was a small project, you could use a smaller teardrop shape, I think. And this just shows some different examples of sizes and different shapes. And wanted to also show that if you could write the floss number directly on the floss drop, or this is a 0.75 Avery sticker. You could put the number here. Makes it a little bit easier to see. Then when you're done with it, you could put another Avery sticker on top of that.
That's Jib going upstairs.
Oh, is it? Yeah. He wants his lettuce.
Yep.
Listen to him. He did a slide into the kitchen.
He slides upstairs in the kitchen like Cosmo slid into Jerry's apartment.
He really does. And poor Jib. I mean, he has glaucoma, which is so sad. Anyway, you could cover up each Avery sticker with another one. So this kind of gives you an idea of how it all works. These are 2-inch floss drop rings. I just got them off of Amazon, and we'll put the link in the description. These are little wire floss drop rings that I got off of Amazon, and they just unscrew. Now, I'll have to say, I think that would take a little more time. I haven't used these yet. I just bought them just to give them a try, but I think I'm gonna like the other rings better because they're so much easier.
So they're like a
to
split
open.
ring. The other is like a split ring and just snap
Yeah,
together.
the other one's just a split ring.
Gotcha.
You open it up. You put your floss drop on there. And if you look over here behind you, I've got one that I've used. You know, I made these teardrop shapes, and then I've just hung my, You can almost read my handwriting. I've just hung my embroidery floss on it. These are pretty big holes. Some of the holes aren't as big. It's definitely something you can play around with, or you can use the dimensions that I gave you. And just another quick little plug for Stitchy Hugs from Sarcy Girls, which is an Etsy shop. I love my floss storage. I really do. And Christine is so nice. So just a little plug for Sarcy Girls.
I'm just glad to get that drying rack out of my head range.
I know. It was a problem for you, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So that wraps up our tutorial. I tried to make it quick, but sometimes it just takes a little bit longer than you think, on how to use your Cricut for cross stitch. And this episode was about making floss drops. The next episode, you'll have to stick around and find out what that is the next time that we do part 2 for this series of how to use your Cricut for cross stitch. Thanks again for watching, and happy stitching.